The day I came home to find my sister sitting at my kitchen table, in my apartment, with my spare key, I knew something was wrong. She had this look on her face. Not guilty, not apologetic, the kind of look that said she'd already decided how this conversation was going to go. My laptop was open in front of her. She'd been going through my files. I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen with my coat still on, my bag still on my shoulder, and I couldn't speak for a full 5 seconds. That's how long it took my brain to catch up to what my eyes were seeing. Because this was my older sister, the one I'd called the night before our mom's surgery. The one I'd driven to Pearson Airport at 4 in the morning, no questions asked. The one I had trusted, completely and without condition for 31 years. "Sit down," she said, like it was her apartment. Like I was the guest, I sat down. I don't even know why. Habit, maybe. 20 years of being the younger one. Her name is Ingrid and she has always been beautiful and certain of herself in a way I spent most of my childhood trying to imitate. She's 4 years older than me, married to a man named Greg, who sells commercial real estate and talks too much at dinner. They live in a semi-detached in Mississauga with a finished basement and a Peloton that Greg has used maybe twice. They are by every conventional measure fine. They are not struggling. I need you to understand that before the rest of this. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I've been doing it for 7 years and I built everything from scratch. My client list, my reputation, my rates. I work from home, which means I work constantly, but it also means I've been able to save steadily, quietly, in a way that my family never quite took seriously because I wasn't working at a firm with a title on a business card. I don't own a car. I rent a 1-bedroom in East Toronto near Broadview, 2 blocks from the coffee shop where I take calls when I need to feel like I've left the house. My life is small and deliberate and mine. 3 months ago my parents told us they were selling their house in Hamilton. They'd lived there since before I was born. The same bungalow on Inverness Avenue, the one with the detached garage my dad converted into a workshop, the one with the backyard that still smells like the lilac bush my mom planted the year they moved in. They were ready. Dad's knees were bad. Mom had been talking about a condo near my aunt in Burlington. It was the right call and we all knew it. What none of us expected was the number. The market had been what it had been. The house appraised at $940,000. After the mortgage was cleared and the fees were settled, my parents were looking at just under $800,000. They'd already decided to give a portion to each of us now rather than wait. $100,000 each. "Well, we can see you enjoy it," my mom said, and she looked so happy saying it that I had to look away. I was happy too. Of course I was. $100,000 for me meant a down payment. It meant finally getting out of the rental cycle. It meant something I had stopped letting myself think about too directly, because wanting it too much felt dangerous. Ingrid and Greg had different plans for their share. Greg's commercial deal, something to do with a strip mall in Brampton that he'd been talking about for 2 years, had fallen through the financing stage. They needed a bridge. Just temporary, Ingrid told me over the phone the week after my parents made their announcement. Just until Greg's next deal closed. Did I have anything I could lend her? Just between us I said no. I said it gently. I said I was sorry. I said I knew it was stressful. I said I hoped it worked out. But I said no. That money was for a down payment and I wasn't in a position to lend it, especially not without a timeline or any paperwork. She went quiet on the phone in that specific way she has, not angry, just recalibrating. "Of course," she said. "No, I totally get it." We hung up and I told myself it was fine. 2 weeks later, my parents transferred the money into the joint savings account I'd kept with them since university. A holdover from when they used to help me cover tuition gaps, never fully closed. I'd forgotten, genuinely forgotten, that Ingrid knew that account existed. She'd co-signed something for me years ago and I'd mentioned it in passing. I didn't think about it. Why would I? I came home on a Thursday afternoon after a client meeting in Liberty Village, poured myself a glass of water, and checked my banking app the way I always do when I'm procrastinating on invoices. The account showed a balance of $214. I stood in my kitchen for a very long time. I went through every recent transaction. There it was, a transfer out 2 days prior for $98,000 to an account I didn't recognize. The remaining $2,000 had gone in a second transfer the following morning, leaving just enough that the account didn't close automatically. I called the bank immediately. They flagged it as a suspicious transfer and opened a dispute file. The customer service rep, She was calm and professional in that careful way people are when they're about to tell you something terrible. Confirmed that the transfers had been initiated through online banking from a device that had logged in with my credentials, my email, my password, which Ingrid knew because I'd asked her to check something in my account the previous Christmas when I was visiting and didn't have my phone. I hadn't changed the password since. I sat down on my kitchen floor. Not dramatically, there just wasn't anywhere else to go. I sat there with my back against the cabinet under the sink, and I thought about all the ways I'd been careless, all the ways I'd trusted without thinking, all the small moments that had added up to this one. Then I called my parents. My mom answered. I explained what had happened as clearly as I could. There was a very long silence, and then she said, "Are you sure?" I walked her through it, the transfer amount, the timing, the account Ingrid had access to. My mom said she was going to call Ingrid and call me back. She called me back 40 minutes later. Her voice was different, strained in a way I recognized from when Ingrid and I fought as kids, that exhausted referee tone. She said Ingrid had admitted to the transfer. She said Ingrid had explained it was temporary, that she fully intended to pay it back, that she'd panicked and made a terrible decision and she was devastated about it. "She's your sister," my mom said. I asked what that meant. "She's asking if you can give her some time before you involve the bank further." I felt something go very flat inside me, not anger. I'd expected anger. This was colder than that. "Mom," I said carefully, "she took my money, without asking. Without telling me. She told me she tried to ask you. She asked me to lend it to her. I said no, that's different." Another silence. "Your father and I think," my mom said, and I heard my dad murmur something in the background. "That family works things out between themselves. Going to the bank, making this official, it's going to follow Greg forever. His career, I said. He's trying to support a family." I didn't say anything. "We're not saying what she did was right," my dad said. He'd picked up the other extension, which meant they'd planned this. "But you're young, you're healthy, you have your business, you can rebuild. Ingrid and Greg are in a difficult spot. I'm going to remember those words for the rest of my life. You can rebuild." I told them I needed to think. I hung up. I cried for about 10 minutes in a way that felt completely involuntary, like a physical response more than an emotional one. Then I washed my face, made tea, and sat at my desk. I called a friend of mine who's a paralegal. She walked me through my options. In Ontario, unauthorized access to a bank account and transfer of funds without consent is fraud under the criminal code. The civil route, small claims or beyond depending on amount, was also available. The bank's dispute process was a third track running parallel. I had a lot of options, actually. What I didn't have was any indication that Ingrid was going to pay me back on her own. I called her. She answered on the second ring, which told me she'd been waiting. "I can't believe this is happening," she said before I'd spoken. "I need you to transfer the money back," I said. "Today, if possible. Or give me a date, something in writing." I told Mom I'd pay it back. "I need it from you. In writing. A transfer schedule, a promissory note, something." She made a sound I can only describe as offended. "You're talking to me like I'm a stranger. You took almost $100,000 out of my account without asking me, Ingrid. I was going to tell you." "When?" Silence. "When the deal closed," she said finally. "In a few weeks. It would have been back before you even." She stopped. She'd heard how that sounded. Before I even noticed, I finished. She didn't answer. "I'm going to the bank tomorrow," I said. "I'm filing a formal dispute. I'm not doing that to hurt you. I'm doing it because it's my money and I need it back and I need a record." That's when she started crying. I want to be honest about what that was like because it would be easy to make myself sound unmoved. I wasn't. Hearing my sister cry has always done something to me. We shared a room until I was 12. I know every register of her voice. But I also knew that the tears were doing what they were supposed to do. So, I held on. "If you do this," she said, catching her breath, "Greg's name will be on a report. This could affect his license. His ability to get financing in the future. Then he should have thought about that before the two of you decided to take my money." "I made that decision, not Greg." "Then you should have thought about it." She hung up. Within the hour, my mom called back. Then my dad. Then, improbably, Greg himself, voice tight, professional, controlled, to explain to me that this was a misunderstanding, that Ingrid had panicked, that he intended to make it right, that going to the authorities would be disproportionate. I asked him for a written repayment agreement. With a timeline. He said he'd have something to me by the end of the week. He did not send anything by the end of the week. I went to the bank on Monday. I also went to the police and filed a report. The officer I spoke to was matter-of-fact about the whole thing. I had documentation. I had the transfer records. I had the account logs. He told me the file would be passed to the Financial Crimes Unit and someone would be in touch. My parents called that evening. My mom was crying. My dad's voice had the particular quality of a man who has decided he is very disappointed. He said I had betrayed my sister. I said she had stolen from me. He said I was being dramatic. He said families go through hard times. He said I had always had a tendency to hold grudges, to make things bigger than they were, to prioritize being right over being kind. He said my sister had made a mistake and I was treating it like a crime. It is a crime, I said. That's not an opinion. That's what the officer told me this morning. Long pause. You already went, my mom said. Yes. Without giving us a chance to. I gave you a week, Mom. I gave Greg a week. Nobody sent anything. Another long silence. My mom's voice when it came back was smaller. I hope you know what you've done. I didn't say anything to that. There wasn't anything to say. The next few weeks were the strangest of my life, not dramatic, mostly just quiet and a little surreal. I went to my client meetings. I filed my invoices. I went to my coffee shop near Broadview and sat in my usual corner and did my work. I texted my mom a few times and got short responses. My dad didn't text at all. Ingrid obviously was not speaking to me. The bank's dispute process moved forward. The fraud team confirmed the unauthorized access. Because I had documented everything, the conversation with my mom where Ingrid admitted to it, the text messages from Greg promising repayment, the login records from the bank, the paper trail was solid. My sister, on the advice of someone, I assume a lawyer, sent me a document through email. It was formatted like a loan agreement. It said she acknowledged receiving $98,000 from my account and agreed to repay it in monthly installments of $2,000 over 4 years. 4 years. At $2,000 a month. For money she took without my permission. I forwarded it to the paralegal friend and asked what she thought. It's not nothing, she said, but you'd be looking at 4 years of hoping she follows through, with a civil enforcement process if she doesn't. Meanwhile, the bank dispute and the police report are already filed. So keep going, I said. That's your call, she said. But yes, I would. I did not sign the document my sister sent. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my aunt around this time, my mom's sister who lives in Burlington and has known me since I was born. She called me out of nowhere one evening, and she started by saying she'd heard what was happening, and I braced myself for another version of the same conversation. Instead, she said, I want you to know that what she did was wrong. Full stop. I didn't expect that. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Your mom is scared, she said. She doesn't know how to hold both things at once, that Ingrid did something terrible and that she still loves her. So she's picking the path that feels like it keeps the peace. It doesn't, but that's what she's doing. I know, I said. You're not being vindictive, she said. You're protecting yourself. Those are different things. I'm sorry, the people who should be telling you that aren't. I cried again after we hung up, better tears that time. The police investigation took longer than I expected. Financial cases apparently always do. About 6 weeks after I filed the report, I got a call from the detective assigned to the case. She told me that based on the evidence, charges were being recommended, fraud over $5,000, which is an indictable offense in Canada. She told me that Ingrid would be notified and given an opportunity to respond before the Crown made any final decision about proceeding. I asked what that meant in practical terms. She explained that this was a formal process now. It was no longer something that could be quietly resolved with a family agreement. I thanked her and sat with that for a while. Ingrid called me that night. I know she'd spoken to a lawyer by then because her whole tone was different. Measured, careful, like every word had been reviewed before it left her mouth. She said she wanted to resolve this civilly. She said she understood she'd made a serious error in judgment. She said she was prepared to repay the full amount within 60 days if I agreed to withdraw the report. I told her I'd think about it. I called my paralegal friend again. She told me what I already suspected, that withdrawing a report doesn't automatically stop a criminal process in Canada. That it's the Crown's decision whether to proceed regardless of what I did. What it might do is factor into the Crown's assessment. It was possible that a demonstrated effort at full restitution, combined with my cooperation, could result in a diversion outcome rather than a criminal record. I thought about that for 3 days. On the fourth day, I called Ingrid back. I told her I would not interfere with the legal process. I had no ability to stop it, and I wasn't going to misrepresent that to her. But I told her that if she repaid the full amount within 60 days, I would tell the Crown's office that restitution had been made in full and that I supported a diversion outcome. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay." The money arrived in 43 days. A full transfer of $98,000 with a note in the memo field that said only the date. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at my phone for a long time after that notification came through. I'd like to tell you it felt triumphant. It didn't, exactly. It felt like closing a door you'd been standing in front of for months, not sure whether you'd be able to move it. The relief was real. The grief underneath it was also real. My parents called me the day after the transfer came through. I think Ingrid told them. My mom asked if we could have dinner, all of us, just to start somewhere. She wasn't apologizing exactly, but she wasn't defending anymore either. Something had shifted. I said I needed a little more time. I meant that. I wasn't punishing anyone. I just needed to sit inside my own life for a while without managing anyone else's feelings about it. I started looking at listings the following week. Condos, mostly. The market in Hamilton was still more accessible than Toronto, and my parents' city had never bothered me. I went to 3 open houses on a Saturday in October by myself, with a coffee in my hand and nowhere I needed to be, and I walked through other people's spaces imagining what it would be like to make one of them mine. One of them had a little study with a window that looked out over a parking lot, which sounds uninspiring, but the light was good. The kind of steady gray-white afternoon light I like for design work. I put in an offer 2 weeks later. I'm sitting in that study now, actually. The parking lot outside is half covered in snow. It's February, which in Hamilton means serious, committed snow, the kind that doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. My cat is asleep on the windowsill. Her name is Scout, and she has strong opinions about radiator placement. I haven't fully repaired things with my parents. We're talking, Sunday calls, some dinners. It's careful and a little formal in a way it didn't used to be, and I don't know if it will ever be exactly what it was. I've stopped needing it to be. I haven't spoken to Ingrid since the transfer. I don't know what version of a relationship we'll have eventually, if any. I don't know if she understands what she did, or if she just understands that it had consequences. I'm not sure it matters to me right now, maybe it will later. What I know is this: I spent years being the easier one. The one who showed up without making demands. The one who lent the spare key and didn't change the password and assumed that love was protection enough. It isn't, always. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to pretend that it is. The window is fogging up at the corners the way it does when Scout breathes on it. The snow is coming down in that slow, deliberate way that means it's planning to stay a while. I have a home. I have the work I built myself. I have my aunt's voice in my head on the hard evenings, reminding me that protecting yourself and being vindictive are different things, and always have been. That's enough. For now, that's more than enough.